Hello everybody, welcome to my 10 tips on assembling this 30-inch mechanics tool cart, U.S. General from Harbor Freight. I'm going to try to get through these really quick. I want it to be less than 10 to 15 minutes. If you want to get a cart like this, I'm not going to make you wait till the end of the video to get the clickbait, if you will. There is a coupon for $169 that is good until December 31st. I'll put a screenshot of it up somewhere in the video, probably after or just before, something. Anyway, there'll be a screenshot here so you can get the coupon number, take a quick screenshot of it and take it into your local Harbor Freight store. Get you a red, black, or blue. You can't get the fancy green, orange, or yellow one. But it is the Series 2 cart. For that's $20 less than even the best Harbor Freight price on it. Okay, now let's get started. Tip number 1 is about the hardware and fasteners. Now, when you get done unloading all the parts and emptying out the drawers of the cabinet, some of the pieces are in there, you'll come across a cardboard box. It's pretty heavy because it's got 4 casters in it and a couple of bags of hardware. That's the way mine came. It had 2 bags of hardware. In one bag, you're going to find a 1/2-inch carriage bolt, and it has 1/2-inch flange nuts along with it. Back of the flange nuts has a little... So the flange nut has a washer built into it. In the second bag, there's carriage bolts that are a little bit longer, flat washers, and then there are these nylock nuts. See, they have a little bit of a crown on them, and you can see the nylon locking whatever stuff in there. So there's 2 bags. This bag with the flat washers and the nylocks is for all of your casters, and then you'll use 2 nylock nuts to attach the struts that hold the lid up. All the rest of these bolts and nuts in the second package, they are the fasteners for the rest of the cabinet, the uprights, braces, and the whole attach your tool chest to the uprights. So it's actually pretty easy. That is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to make the thing lighter for unloading it or lifting this chest onto the uprights later on in the assembly. You can make it a lot lighter by simply removing the drawers. They do come out. There is a catch right here, lever on this slide back here. This one pushes down and the other side lifts up. Pull it out a little and it'll come all the way out. Once you have all the drawers out, then it's a lot lighter. And you can refer to this video, here's a shot of the front, on how the drawers go back in. Be careful putting them in so that you do not bend the slide. That's tip number 2. Tip number 3 on assembling the cart is to leave all of your flange nut and bolts loose. So once you have your casters on and they're all tightened up, you're going to build from the bottom on up, starting with these uprights. All the rest of those bolts and nuts you want to leave loose after you have the casters on. That way things line up a lot better, and then when you tighten it up, everything will be nice and sturdy and work its way into place. So tip number 3, leave the flange nuts and bolts a little loose until you're all done putting it together. Then go back and tighten them all back up from the bottom all the way up to the top. That is tip number 3. Now tip number 4 has 3 parts. The first one is pretty easy. You have 4 casters, so there's 2 fixed casters and 2 swivel casters. Now, it may look different than mine because I've modded mine. But All you have to remember is that 2 fixed casters on one end, 2 swivel casters on the other. Until you put on the handle and mount the tray, this tray right here, it doesn't matter which end you put them on. The second part of that is that this liner, this black liner that's in here, it feels like it's glued in, mostly because the weight of the chest sitting on top of it during shipping has kind of stuck it in place. But it will peel back. Now, I recommend you don't pull the thing all the way out of there. I would just peel back a corner. That's what I did. The third part of tip 4 is the hardest part, I think one of the hardest part of putting this cart together, and that is futzing with the casters while you're trying to put your carriage bolt in and put a nylock nut on it, because the nylock nut just doesn't spin on because it locks on once you've got it tightened down. And the other thing that presents a problem is that the carriage bolt doesn't sit down in the slot, the slotted hole, to mount the caster. And that's because the powder coat on this, which is very nice, the powder coat gets down into that hole, and so now the bolt doesn't quite fit. It will settle down in the notch once you tighten down your nut. But you might want to put the bolt in the hole, pre-fit it before you start trying to fumble with these casters, because they're really heavy duty. So you might want to pre-fit the bolt in there and maybe get a mallet or something and tap the bolt down into the notch, the slotted hole, so that it will fit in there past the powder coat. That's tip number 4. Tip number 5 is use a 1/2-inch flex head ratcheting wrench. This is a gear wrench, but Harbor Freight makes them as well. They have a 5-piece set, and after the coupon, it's about $20. I will try to slip in a screenshot of a 20% off coupon so you can get the number, and a link below where you can get a Harbor Freight ratcheting flex head wrench like this one, 1/2-inch. All these nuts are going to be 1/2-inch, including the ones for the caster. Get in there, you see that? It's in there just great. You're going to have a real difficult time probably getting a socket in here. And this just works really, really good. There's tip number 5. Use a 1/2-inch flex head ratcheting wrench. Tip number 6 involves the upright corner braces. There are 4 of them. First of all, orient them correctly. So put all 4 of them together and make sure that the hole in the center and the holes on either of the 2 ends line up with the other brackets or corner braces. That way you'll know you have all 4 of them oriented correctly. Now that you've got them oriented correctly, make sure that as you're putting them on, the bottom distance here is shorter between the center nut and the 2 other bolts, between the center bolt and the 2 other bolts. That distance is shorter than the distance up here between the 2 high bolts and the center bolt. They almost look symmetrical, but this distance is much greater, as you can see by this 12-inch ruler, than the distance down here between the center and the 2 lower bolts. So first of all, orient them with each other so that all the holes line up. And then when you put them on, make sure that the shorter end between the middle and 2 lower bolts is on the bottom. That's tip number 6. Tip number 7 is about placing this tray and the handle. We talked earlier about it not mattering which side or which end you put the swivel casters versus the fixed casters. That's because it didn't matter until you get ready to put the tray on, because when you put on these cross braces for the sides and the front and back, they use the same bolts to mount this tray. So pay attention to which side you put those swivel casters on now, because that's what side this tray goes on, and this is also the side that your push handle goes on. Another tip here is for you people that are lefties, or if you're going to put it in a corner like that one over there, and this handle would be in the way, it would be against the wall, be hard to get out of the pain in the butt anyway. You can put the handle on the other side or the tray on the other side, per se. The best way to do that is later on when you get ready to put the chest on and attach it to these uprights, turn it around the other way so that the back is on this side and the drawers are on that side. That way your handle will be to the right, or yeah, to the right, and then your tray will be to the left rather than vice versa. The handle's to the left and tray to the right for us righties, and for you lefties, you could still mount the chest the other way and have it work the same way it's supposed to. So don't change which side you put the handle and the tray on. Just turn the chest around. That is tip number 7. Tip number 8 is about the little bit of confusion over where the end braces and front and back brace go. This call out is kind of confusing because I think it's for something else, but if you look at it and where its direction comes from the instructions here, you'll see that the end brace lip sits on top of the front and back brace lip. So let's look at that on the cart. This is the end brace, and you can see inside of here is this lip. You can't see it on here, but you can see that it does fold under for the front and rear brace. So according to the instructions, this brace is supposed to sit on top. This lip, at least, is going to sit on top of the lip for this brace when you put them in there. And that makes everything line up. Now, I did mine differently. I put them vice versa. The lip to this brace is on top. And the reason for that is that this one has a little lip. This one has a bigger lip on it, I think. And if you put it on top, it gets a little bit closer to the tool chest. So you could actually run a couple of bolts up through this brace and attach it right to the tool chest, because it doesn't do that now. However, I did see a video that talked a little bit about that, and I'll try and find it again, but I doubt whether I'll find that video again. It just mentioned it, but I looked myself when I was at my Harbor Freight store, and I checked, I believe it was the red tool chest, had a couple of holes in here. Now, they didn't have bolts, but there was a couple of holes in this brace up under this lip here where you could bolt the chest to that cross brace, which would make it a lot sturdier so it wouldn't rack this way or that way, which is a side that it would tend to because that's where the handle is. So I put mine that way, but that's not the way the instructions say. It wants this lip to be on top of that lip. That is tip number 8. Tip number 9 is a quickie, pretty easy. If you're going to add the side tray, if you bought it at the same time, I recommend you do that, because now is the time to put it on when you're putting the chest together. The reason for that is that the tray itself mounts to the same bolts. I think you can see them in there. The same bolts as you're attaching the chest to this upright and the back upright. So if you have the tray, go ahead and unpack it now and put it on. There is other hardware included with the side tray, but I didn't need it. That's tip number 9. And finally, we're at tip number 10. And this is a pretty easy one. When you go to put your nylock nut on this strut to attach it, it's already attached at the lower end when you unpack your chest. When you go to attach it up here, this little nut in here to hold it with while you're tightening down your nylock with your 1/2 inch is a 12 millimeter. Yeah, that's right. It's an upside down 12 millimeter, but it is a 12 millimeter. Why these others are 1/2 inch and this is 12 millimeter, I don't know. You can get a 13 millimeter on those nuts, but it's loose. Use a 1/2 inch. It's perfect. So 12 millimeter to hold the bolt steady on this side while you tighten up the 1/2 inch nylock nut that goes on the other side. That's tip number 10. And that's all 10 of them. My tips. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the video. Also, tune back in later or watch for my next video, which is going to be mods and hacks for this tool chest that I've made to this one. I think you're going to really like it. It's going to be a good video. And don't forget to take a screenshot. Go back and take a screenshot of that coupon. I'll also put some links to some of the things I talked about below. And if you like and subscribe, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Join us next time. Goodbye.